What's going on, everybody? Ashe, everybody, to all my people out there. Welcome back to another episode of my Unapologetic Perspective. This is the podcast where we give our point of view of controversial topics from my experience, Black history, and our knowledge as African Americans. Black history presently lives in us, so we can continue to excel into the future. It's one thing to know Black history, it's another thing to take advantage of what the people in Black history did for you. In the words of Malcolm X, there will come a time where the Black people will wake up and become intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, and we believe that we are in that era. I am your host, Marshy Baker Stevens, and to the right of me is Shaquan Battle.
Hello.
And to the right of him is Jerome Battle. What's up? We have a guest today who really needs no introduction, but I'm gonna try my best to give him a Madison Square Garden type introduction. We have no other than the man who originated the triplet flow, the man who mentored Jay-Z, the man who has worked with artists such as The Lox, Mary J. Blige, the OJs, M.O.P., Diddy, Rakim, Cool G Rap, Queen Latifah, and Nipsey Hussle. We talking about the originator, Jaz-O. Welcome to the show, family.
That's
Absolutely.
right, literally.
Absolutely, man. We are honored to have you here on this show. I've been wanting to do an episode on hip hop for a while, and I told Dad, I was like, we cannot do this episode without Jaz. Like, we need him here because you are important to the hip hop culture. As a pioneer, as an artist, as an activist, all the things that you do, all the things that you have done is important. And we kind of saw that when you began to do the Instagram videos, like how big of an audience you actually have in New York. Like, you have like a cult following. Like, how does that feel, like where you're at right now in your life? Like, how does it feel when you're able to look back and see like how so many people rock with you out of respect for your music and who you are as a person?
Actually, it makes me feel that I should be responsible for doing more. It's not really a burden, but it definitely entertains a responsibility. I feel like like just like your introduction. Sometimes I feel like the introductions and the accolades are bigger than me because I don't look at myself that way. So oftentimes I feel like I have to continue to do things to maintain the honor that I've received over the years. So that's really the sum of it as far as how it makes me feel. But I'm also very proud. I'm also very thankful, to be somebody. Even as a young child, I always felt that I was, I know it sounds cliche, but I always felt that I was going to be somebody. Right. I didn't know what, but, I was going to be somebody. I was going to be either playing a guitar or talking in front of a bunch of people or playing the drums in somebody's band and then going on my own. I felt something. So so I thank you and I appreciate being on here, and that's how it makes me feel.
Absolutely. Me personally, on this podcast, I like to do a chronology of history. We always like to start from the beginning and then work our way through it, because we like to see what was the cause and what was the effect and the changes that happened in between. We know that hip hop started in New York. You heard the stories of DJ Kool Herc. You hear about Grandmaster Flash. You hear about African Bambaataa. All of those great legends. When was your first encounter, or the first time that you heard this new hip hop culture and hip hop style?
Actually, I was in 297 Park, which is a public school or elementary school park across the street from Marshy, and we were just shooting around, and somebody had a radio out there, and King Tim III came on the radio. And yeah, and so I was already rhyming and stuff, but you know, I was new to it. But at the same time, when I heard that, it was the realization that, oh, you can make records now? Oh, y'all doing records? I want to do a record. So that's where it was with me. And also, as far as high school is concerned, when I was accepted to Fiorella H. LaGuardia High School of Music and the Arts, when it was on Convent Avenue in Manhattan, and being kids from Brooklyn, we were exposed for the first time to you know, the uptown style of emceeing and DJing. You know, in Brooklyn, they, you know, we were going vroom, 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 vroom. You know, uptown they was going, you know, he's like, what is that?
Right.
So, you know, and as far as emceeing, you know, we was on some Mikey and Ike were playing in the ditch type of shit. And uptown, you know, we heard like routines, like this dude come in, and then that dude come in. I'm like, oh, they doing like routines, and they going, yes, y'all, to the beat, y'all.
That was like, your man, right? Grandmaster Kaz, right?
Yeah, Kaz, the Nine, you know, like a whole bunch of Zulu Nation crews, you know, the Jazzy Five, Cosmic Force, you know, Soul Sonic Force, like the Zulu Nation, they were kind of like you know, as far as the MCing and DJing, they were like the equivalent of Parliament Funkadelic.
Right.
You know,
that's right.
They had mad interchangeable parts. You know, it's like, yo, what's Globe doing over here? I thought he was down with Soul Sonic Force, and
right, they was all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but that's when I was first really exposed. And when I heard, you know, when I heard cats like Grandmaster Kaz with Cold Crush, and I heard Melly Mel, of course, these guys really brought it to my attention that you can excel in this thing. It became an actual craft with a particular skill set. And I was like, oh shit. It's like, that's where I want to be. I want to be where Kaz is. When I heard Kaz, because Kaz didn't only you know, and I'm sure he was the captain of the Cold Crush, and he used to do all of the he used to lead all the routines. And in the routines, you know, they did a lot of singing as well. And Kaz was the one who, out of everybody, you could tell that he could actually hold a note. Like if he was to sing like a song, like an R&B song, he can actually hold a note. And I was like, oh, he's singing, and his cadence and the things that he said is just his whole style. I was like, marketing wise, like he'd be the perfect MC, you know, because he had, I mean, all of the other guys who were current, that did start putting out records and stuff, he was way beyond them. I mean, as far as, huh?
You just mentioned something. I'm gonna cut in real quick because I don't want to lose this part. Is when we talk about hip hop being a culture and the art of hip hop, you just mentioned one of the biggest aspects of that is the term MC, master of ceremony, where today we hear people talk about rappers and rhymers and things of that nature. Can you just talk a little bit about what an MC is, what an MC was considered during that era?
Right. Well, you know, MC, of course, came from, you know, it's an acronym for Master of Ceremony.
That's right.
And that's where the hip hop MC came from. You know, it was the guy that, you know, the DJ wasn't talking, he was DJing. At one time, the DJ would do all the talking.
That's right.
But it kind of evolved into like, yo, I don't feel like talking. Here, take the mic and you talk to the crowd, get the crowd hyped and everything else. And it wasn't even about rhyming yet. And so it became, the master of ceremony became the MC. And then the MC started saying little jingles and stuff like that, and then started rhyming. And so the person who rhymes became the MC.
That's right.
Good. Absolutely. When it was your time to, I don't know if you started in the park or you had an audience around. What your first time spitting your rhymes in front of a mass group of people? Take me through that.
The first time ever was really in Marshy Center. Because outside of that, we were in each other's houses, you know, or apartments, you know, in the projects, and we were making tapes, or we would just be practicing, you know, in, you know, Allen Iverson style.
That's right.
Practice. You know, and after a while, people started hearing about me, and we started doing the center. My man Stephen Crossland, may he rest in power. He was my first DJ. I can't even remember his name, his DJ name, but Duncan, who lived right around Steve's way, he was also a DJ, and I think that's how Steve got started DJing. And after that, there was another, like, I guess, force in the projects, you know, as far as the new age of MCs and DJs, and that was David Gregory. He was known as Cool KG. So we had all linked together and became like a little crew. So KG had Paul with getting in, you know, Paul Robeson Center, you know, which is Marshy Center, and, you know, started DJing down there. And he wanted me to come down there, and, you know, we had the original high potent MCs. It's just so much history. But then that was really the first time I MC'd in front of a crowd. Now, the first time I actually MC'd and more than one person heard it, my man Ron Henley, who lived in 644 in the projects where I lived, and you know, he had an uncle who lived in Red Hook projects named Mango. So we called him DJ. He was called DJ Mango. So on the weekends, me, Ron, and Chris, one of our boys, Chris, we used to always go to Red Hook, and we hang out at Mango's house. And Mango obviously was a DJ. So if he wasn't DJing outside, he would be DJing in the house and stuff like that. So one night, DJ Mango had a house party, or I should say Uncle Mango. He had a house party, and we went to the house party. And you know how the house parties are set up in apartments. The DJ setup is in the bedroom, and you know the doors closed, and
yeah,
and the party atmosphere is in the living room. So he started DJing, and you know, the crowd started getting hyped, you know, aka getting drunk, and you know, because I think somebody said something on the mic, and the people got excited. It wasn't me though. And then I think it was Ron, and then Ron passed me the mic. He's like, "Yo, you be MCing in the center, right?" I was like, "Yeah," I said, "but I ain't never really MC like this. And he was like, "Come on, man." He's like, "They can't even see you." I said, "Plus they all drunk, and you know, if they don't like you, they don't know who you are anyway." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." So he duped me and started rhyming. So I had about 3 or 4 rhymes at the time. And so I said all of them. They were going crazy. They were going crazy. I was like, you know, and I was like,
let me write some more. You was like, let me write some more now.
Yeah, that's right. My head exploded. I couldn't get out the
apartment
by the end of the night. Yep. And that motivated me to start writing more.
I do got a question. You had mentioned your DJ, and then the Kings County freestyle, the drum freestyle. You said shout out to DJ Stevie Steve. And you started talking about the Marshy Center. Was that somewhere that, because we talk about on here all the time, you know, kids having somewhere to go to keep them out of trouble. Was that what Marshy Center was for you?
Nah, because I was in trouble anyway.
Bedford became that place for you, right, to keep you out of trouble.
Exactly. That's what Bedford was, you know. And then that only did half good, you know, but it did good enough. It did good enough. I was allowed to fortunately finish high school by moving to Bedford. But the center was more, it was recreation for us because it was a facility that we could do what we were doing all the time anyway, you know, because I mean, as a young teenager, all I was doing, I was actually going to school at the time, playing basketball. I was smoking weed back then, and emceeing. That was my life, you know. And the girls, you know, that goes without saying.
that comes with the territory,
you know. But yeah, Marshy Center, it was more like an escape for people who already had done some shit, and they're like, yo, let's go in the center. They ain't gonna find us in there.
Right. Plus it was territorial. So back in those days, territory was huge, like different projects, different parts, different even different barrels. Everything was so territorial, and you could do that right in your own territory, right in your own projects. But I remember specifically being with you a lot of times, and we would go places, and it would take us forever to get there because everybody in New York knew who you were. Everywhere we went, it took us hours. If it was 15 minutes away, it took us 2 hours to get there. Every 2 minutes, somebody wanted to stop and talk to you. And I even remember we would go other places because, again, everything was so territorial, but you had the green light to go anywhere. I remember going uptown, and people like Heavy D would stop you. You didn't stop them. They would stop you and like, yo, Jazz, what's up, man? And that's a 45-minute conversation. I remember being at the park playing ball. Niggas would interrupt the game. Yo, Jazz. Prime example, the first time you met Biggie, who was not Biggie at the time. He was just a dude in the area. The first time you met him, we was playing ball at the park. I'll Be Sure, for people that remember the I'll Be Sure guy. Same thing. Meet him at the park. This nigga interrupt the basketball game. Yo, Jazz, I just heard your song on the radio. You know, there was some other things that you did in the music industry. As Bake talked about the triplet style, starting that. But there's some other things that you did that was monumental in the industry that other people weren't doing. I know from personal experience, you're the first one to even do sampling at D&D Studio, which was a infamous studio during the time, correct?
Well, actually, it was an unknown studio, and what happened was they were only doing like band stuff. Like if you know, they were doing rock sessions, reggae sessions, and what happened when I got the deal with EMI, my management, they called out to some studios, and so Doug Grammer and Dave and Doug of D&D, they called my management back, and they were like, you guys asked for a turntable, a drum machine, and a MIDI keyboard. And they were like, we're just curious, like, what does he plan to do with that? That's how rare not only was sampling, period, in the industry, but how rare it was for a studio to book and to have those items rented in order for, you know, to do a session. And they were like, we don't know, but that's what he asked for. So get it for him. We paying for it. Yeah. And that's what it was with D&D. Yeah.
Absolutely. You recorded to Word to Jazz album in London.
Yeah.
So I got a question.
Yeah. Word to the Jazz. Yeah.
All right, Word to the Jazz. So I got a question. So here are, hip hop is still in this baby form, at that time. And here are y'all from Brooklyn in London. Like, what was Europeans looking at y'all like? Like, or were they already hip to the new culture that was taking America by storm?
Well, those who actually were hip to things, they were in awe, because we came from the US and we lived for 2 months in, a prestigious neighborhood in London. I can't even remember what the area was called, in a 2-story flat where we had both stories, both floors. And like Moni Love talked about it, and I didn't really pay attention to it. I was just like, yo, I got a deal. This where we living. I gotta be in the studio in the morning. That's how I looked at it. It didn't hit me till like all of it was over. But she talked about it. She was like, she didn't even know that area in London existed. And the things that we did, like Wednesdays, there was a restaurant that we ate in. That Wednesday was the hot night. It was called the American Dream, and it was owned by a woman from California. I don't know what part, and I don't even remember her name. But we were there every Wednesday, and I mean, we had dinner. We sat at the table with like people that I never sat at the table with in the US. Like one night it was Anita Baker and George Duke. May he rest in power. Another night it was Keith Sweat. And there were other famous people that we didn't even know, and they were like, hey, what's going on? And Anita Baker acting like everybody's mom. You know what I'm saying? Put that over there. And if he wants that, then you should put it over here so he doesn't have to reach over and like.
and that was during Anita Baker's prime. That was during her prime.
Definitely in her prime, and she, she wasn't over there picking roses or nothing.
That's
she
right.
was over there working.
Working.
So and everybody passed through there. Like London, as it is still, I'm sure, a major market, for entertainers as far as touring and everything. And like the biggest acts, that was I mean, even Keith Sweat, that was when I Wanna was on
First
its way
album.
to platinum.
That's right. His first album. That's right.
Yep. And everybody in their prime, and they were looking at me like, what are you doing out here? Like, I'm trying to be like y'all. But
so with that said, I remember that, and I don't remember if they were signed to the same management company or they were signed to EMI Records. I don't know if it was the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It was one of those groups that was just new.
Label mates.
Yeah,
we were label mates. And
so I remember
EMI going up to EMI Records with you several times, and they really didn't know. They didn't know anything about rap. They didn't know anything about the culture, the music. Really and truly, they ain't know nothing about black people. I remember we used to go up to this. We used to go up there, and they would look at us like we were. Probably looked at us like we were thugs, but they didn't even know how to speak to us. Yo, what's happening, man? They really didn't even know how to talk to us, let alone how to relate and have a conversation and understand. Can you tell us a little bit how the industry, and it doesn't necessarily have to be racism, but how the industry viewed black artists, and we can call it this now, black music, because that was at the time black music.
Right, and that's what they called it.
That's right.
They didn't call it, now they may say urban music or what have you. But they called it black music. Like when you went, like when we walked that walk and then we turned right up at EMI And where's the black music department? All the way in the back, right?
All the way in the back.
And
That's
I
right.
mean, we're not talking about mailroom people. We talking about executives all the way in the back.
All the way in the back.
The VP of black music, the assistant VP of black music, all in the back.
All the way in
like
the back.
that. So yeah, I mean, they looked at us like definitely an oddity, always as a potential
Money maker.
cash cow. Yeah,
That's right.
Because it was trending and it was something that everybody else was doing. Warner Records had taken great advantage, you know, of course, by signing or assimilating Cold Chillin'.
And then Tommy.
Tommy, exactly. So so they were really taking advantage of the market. And so EMI, you know, I guess they wanted in, and I don't think they really knew how to go about it. Even for me, I think personally, which I mean, I'm not complaining, but they spent way too much money. You know,
But they didn't know what to do. Only thing they could do is throw money at it. And I remember, and I might be wrong, but one of your first tours was with Jody Watley. And Jody Watley at the time, she wasn't the R&B icon. She was like a popular music icon where a lot of her audiences were white.
Exactly. So I had like zero business being on tour with her, but I was like, look, tour, exposure, you know.
And she also had, was Rakim and them on that same tour because they had that song Friends?
No, let me tell you what happened. It's a crazy story. They wanted, and that's what I had to really swallow my pride, because they wanted Rakim on the tour, and I don't know exactly who it was. I don't know if it was Rakim or if it was Eric B or if it was their management at the time, but they declined, you know, because, and I think it was because at that time, Rakim was just as big as Jody Watley.
Right.
You know, so for him to open up for her, you know, didn't make a whole lot of sense, even though he had the song with her.
Right.
UMCs was the other group on the tour, right? Was it UMCs, the ones that had that song Blue Cheese?
No, that was another tour.
Okay.
This particular tour, it was all Jody Watley, and I was just the opening act. They asked me, was I willing to do that? And I'm like, do I have to pay anybody any money? You know, y'all gonna give me everything I need. I ain't doing nothing else. You know, it's not like today where, you know, you gotta put your music on all the DSPs, and, you know, you're basically self-managed, and you outsource, you know, your outsource of like companies that are already established and people you may have working for you. So I wasn't doing nothing else. I was doing the same shit. I was like, yo, let's go to the park, shoot some ball.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, yeah, let's do it.
But did you ever feel like at some point they was trying to market what they consider black music to like more of a white audience?
Yeah.
That, at least that was EMI's attempt anyway.
Yeah, that was EMI's attempt, and because they didn't know anything else to do. They didn't know what else to do. And I was on that tour for like 5 weeks, and it was very enjoyable. You know, made some money, ate good, lived good, met a lot of people. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and that was actually my next question, because when you listen to Word to the Jazz and then transition into the To Your Soul album, was the Word to the Jazz album more of what they wanted you to do, and the To Your Soul album was more of what you wanted to do? Because I mean, you got songs on it too. You're like Divided as a Nation, Black Man in Charge. I mean, was that more of a Buck the System type album, or that's just
Oh yeah,
the way?
yeah. They definitely ain't want none of that. That was the end. That was the end of that. Because after that was the EP, and then it was like, yeah, nice knowing you. Yeah. So, yeah. So I think it also represented a certain era. And when I recorded Word to the Jazz, it was in line with stuff like Hawaiian Sophie and things of that nature. It was, a lot of stuff on there is commercial. And I felt like that's sort of what I had to do to get to the next level. So, and also during my stay in London, like all I was playing was Fear of a Black Planet.
That's right.
Public Enemy all the time.
That's right.
And then, and it was so ironic to go in the studio, talk about give a little extra, you know,
Yeah.
from that, and then, you know, put on my headphones, you know, Fear of a Black Planet. Listening to Chuck D and them.
That Public Enemy, that right there, that probably inspired you in multiple ways, not just from the philosophy aspect, but also from the production aspect. You and I used to talk about this all the time. The Hit Squad, them niggas used to put together some music, man.
Oh, the Bomb Squad.
The Bomb Squad, they used to put together some music.
Yeah.
So from production aspect, that inspired you a little bit, because I remember, I remember when you finally got your own equipment in the crib. You didn't want to play ball no more. You didn't want to do anything. All you wanted to do was put together some music, man.
Yep. And I used to follow them crazy, like, you know, Eric Sadler, Hank and Keith Shockley. Yeah, I followed them. I followed them like to the point where if I recognize like a horn riff that they use in a particular song, like say for instance, Night of the Living Bassheads. Yeah, Night of the Living Bassheads, and they had that that crazy high horn, and all the different little horn sections. I used to like, yo, is that James Brown? Is it the JBs? Is it, you know, Lynn Collins?
They used to hide it.
Because I knew it had that sound, and I would find those records, and I make my own beats from those same riffs, and, you know, my own drums and stuff like that. Yeah, so they're one of my favorite all-time producing or production teams.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so during that era too, we all go through transitions. I mean, you watch this podcast, if you go back and you watch like Bake in his early segments of motivational speaking, everybody go through their transitions where they may talk about things that they've learned or that they've tried to incorporate in their life at that time.
Yeah.
And then you see a transition because they learn from that, then they move on. You went through a transition when you did the To Your Soul album, where you were more of Ansar the Law, so to speak, which is Ansar Islam. And then you transition from that to, and I'll let you go with where you transition from that into whatever school of thought and thought process you were following at that time.
Yeah, so the second album, I was really, after I got home from London from recording the first album, I became open to, and it was leaning more toward the spiritual aspect of religion, if you will. So Islam seemed closer than, you know, me being able to relate to somebody, you know, like anywhere else, like, you know, Far Eastern schools of thought. You know, Islam was right there in your face. Mm-hmm. And it was something that a young lady named June, while I was in London, she took me to a masjid, a massive masjid in London. I think is either the biggest in the world or one of the biggest in the world. And I started reading books, but it didn't really hit me because it was telling me how to do spiritual things. And my understanding even back then was you do spiritual things according to the spirit, meaning your spirit, not a spirit's interpretation or spiritual interpretation out of a book. So when I came back to the States, we were playing ball in 318 gym, and they were being run, the after school gym was being run by these Sunni Muslims who had the masjid on Fulton and Nostrand. I don't know if you remember that.
Remember. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So so I used to hear them, and I don't know if they were doing it on purpose or not, but they were talking about this group of individuals who were so jammed up. And it's like jammed up. And one day I asked him, I was like, yo, what do you mean by jammed up? He's like, yeah, they just caught up and ignorant and set in their own ways and all of this other stuff. And I was like, little did they know, they aroused my curiosity about the Ansars, because that's who they were talking about.
They were talking about the Ansars, right?
Yeah. And talking about how they jammed up and everything. So that interest, that rose interest in me. And then what happened was I just kept running into Ansars here and there. I don't want to extend this story because there's so many legs to this and so many arms to it, but I'll just stick to the plan. So from Ansarullah, I just constantly listened to things. You know, I saw that in all books there's truth. You know, the issue is in interpretation, intent of the interpreter, and so on and so forth. So I figured if I'm going to use an interpretation, let me use my own, because I know my intention, you know. And from as long as I can remember, when I did start searching, my search or my intention was, you know, everybody talking about this dude supposed to be so popular. His name is God. I want to meet him. I'm dead serious. You know, I want to meet him. Where is he? You know, you telling me you can't see him. This. That doesn't add up to anything else that is logical. So I figured that the best way for me to do that is to start reading. And when I read, I realized that, man, this book is saying a lot of the same things that this book is saying. It's just that the interpretation, because of a particular person's orientation due to their religion,
that's right,
forces them to say this, you know, forces them, you know, even to the simplest thing like, you know, this is God over here, or Yahweh or Jehovah over there, and it's Allah over here. And, you know, but y'all talking about, that's just a simple example. Y'all talking about the same thing.
Same entity, right? That's right.
Right. Whether you want to interpret it as a physical being, a spiritual being. I'm a spiritual being, but I'm physical. So that's then what? You know, so then it comes down to the interpretation and the realization of who you are, because that's all that really counts. Everything else is just a catalyst for you to measure who and what you are.
That's right. Absolutely. Real quick.
So that's where I went to from
Ansarullah. Yeah.
Just got a notification on my phone. Rest in peace to Bill Russell, who dies at the age of 88.
Man. I'm saying oh man, but I'm not really sad because he lived a good long life.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, for me, when people talk about one of the best, he's never mentioned as a GOAT. Never. You never talk about Bill Russell, but nobody won as many championships as he did.
Right.
He's the only one. People talk about Wilt Chamberlain. He's the reason Wilt Chamberlain didn't win a lot of championships because of Bill Russell. But nobody talks about Bill Russell.
Bill Russell.
They will now.
Exactly.
They will now.
Yeah.
Bandwagoners.
Yeah. Now he's dead. Now he's the greatest now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Give him his flowers, if you want to call it that, while
That's
he's here.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like, I guess he wasn't flashy enough, and they rarely speak about his many exploits as far as supporting his race.
In Boston, in one of the most racist.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what you call standing up.
Yep.
That's what you call standing up. So we send a special ashe
absolutely.
out to Bill Russell.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It's all love and it's all peace. And may he continue to find the greatest thing and become more of himself in his endless journey.
That's right.
Ashe, brother.
Ashe.
I want to transition real quick, Jazz, because on this podcast, Dad talks a lot about how smart and intelligent your mom is. And we've talked about different people on this podcast, people like Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Noble Drew Ali, all of those great people. Who was somebody that you read about or you listened to that gave you knowledge, hope, and direction? Because even in rappers, we know the rappers that read, we know the rappers that are intelligent because you can hear it in their lyrics. You're one of those people. So who was somebody that you were influenced by?
I guess it's a myriad of many individuals. I mean, from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who somebody recently spoke about, I actually saw a post on IG, and somebody mentioned how little credit he has been given. Of course he hasn't been given credit, and they actually made, and this is no stab at Farrakhan, but they made Louis Farrakhan bigger than the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and that's totally ludicrous.
Yeah, but that's by design. I mean, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that's what he always wanted. He never wanted to be the focus. He always wanted to be about the message. Yeah, the people got publicized more than the message, even with Malcolm X. But that was the whole plan, is he wanted it to go beyond him, the physical.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how you get it beyond Malcolm X and Farrakhan, the physical, because now that's all you ever hear about. You don't even hear about Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah.
Nope. Because for one, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he quoted many things that was told to him, by Master Farad Muhammad. And one of those things he talked about, and I speak of it, periodically to certain people, because they'll bring it up because it's something noticeable. Like, and I'll even pitch it to y'all. Y'all notice, like, in the summer, like, you don't really see bees anymore?
Yeah.
Master Farad Muhammad.
Yeah, I remember reading
communicating to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah, I remember reading that back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Which is crazy because you're talking about 30 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you look at when he told him that.
That's right.
Even further
back.
Yeah.
60s and 70s maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we also talked about, we had a whole episode, and we've redone this over and over again, about housing segregation. Most people, when they think about segregation, they just think about Jim Crow South, right? But you being from New York, we understand that the redlining and housing segregation with housing projects, what that did to bigger cities. You growing up in Marshy projects, did you ever feel like y'all was segregated from the white America and the rest of New York?
Fortunately, we didn't. Well, I didn't. I grew up in a household, that was full of love. We had our difficulties, but up until I was like, I guess 10, maybe 11, 10 or 11, I was in a 2-parent household, and financially, for what we had to do financially, we were safe and secure. And we weren't ignorant to people who had more than what we had, but we had everything we needed, and a lot of the things that we wanted. So I didn't really, I have to thank my mother and father for shielding us, if you will, from the many ugly aspects of social thinking and social programming and such.
What was the biggest culture shock coming from New York down to good old Bedford?
It wasn't really a shock, because we were coming down there every summer since as long as I can remember. Long as I can remember, we, what was it, 725 Longwood Avenue?
Yeah. Yeah, I was telling them, they were asking me what was my first experience with hip hop, and I couldn't really say. I knew the first hip hop song I heard on the radio, and that was the King Tim Third song you just mentioned. It wasn't Rapper's Delight. It was the King Tim Third song. Once you reach the top, you won't be alone. You got King Tim on the microphone. I remember that. But I also remember when you used to come down in the summers. So this is like, I'm trying to think. I'm thinking maybe like 84, maybe. I found out 2 things. And one of them is going to be something a lot of people don't know, but I'm going to say it. You and I talked about it before. Is you used to draw. You was an artist, not just writing, not just music, because a lot of people think of Jazz as being a rapper. I don't. I think of Jazz as an artist. First, my cousin, so that's fucked up. That's the first part. But as an artist, because you not only drew and rap, but you sing, which a lot of people may not know that. But I used to see some of your drawings, like I'm talking like 83, 84. And this was B-boy style. This is when the B-boy style was popular in New York, which is kind of, I don't know if that was pre-hip hop or were the two like merged together. But I remember some of your drawings were B-boy style drawings that a lot of people didn't even know you could draw, let alone seen in your drawings. But I did. And I stole some of that shit with some of my drawings when I was younger. But for the culture, what do you think, or what do you believe is the culture of hip hop?
I guess I'll paraphrase Grandmaster Caz, because they asked him a question about the beginnings, and what he elaborated on was the fact that many of these things we were already doing as a culture. When the reason why they started manufacturing the thick laces to go on the sneakers is because we were doubling up the laces. We were putting like 2 laces, per shoe in the sneaker, so that it would look thicker. And we would, diversify the colors and all that other stuff. And that's what caused them to manufacture it. As far as the wave cap, we were cutting up the BVD nylon shirts, like one of the things I think it started in the prison system, and then tie, put a hole in the ends and tie a shoelace on one end, on both ends, and wrap it around and so on and so forth. And now you can get one already done at your local beauty.
Most creative people in the world. We talk about in this podcast all the time.
Yep.
We're the most creative people in the world.
Exactly. So when you talk about hip hop, you're talking about Isaac Hayes did a song called The Rap, and he was rapping. There was a popular DJ in the early 70s when we actually listened to AM radio. He was on WWRL in New York, and his name was Frankie Crocker. And at the end of his show every day, he did this thing called The Rap. So to paraphrase Kaz, we were already doing these things. Of course, we were doing graffiti. Of course, we were doing dance battles that they turned into freestyles and stuff like that. So all of these things were already happening. It's just that when the marketing aspect came in, when, I guess people with money, they said, oh, look at these people, look at what they can do. This is another thing. This is another form of expression that we can capitalize on. And I mean, and I'm not saying it maliciously. I'm saying that that's how it is. That's what it is. And so people in the Bronx, of course, they called it B-boy because that's what they saw it as. And it was a culmination of all the things that they did, doubling up with the laces, and then they started manufacturing thick laces. The wave cap or the stocking cap, to protect your do.
The tight crease in the pants, right?
Exactly. Then start sewing the crease in and stuff like that. All of those things, the acrylic joints, we could go into the whole thing with Nike and the Shirt Kings.
That's right.
They used to do it on the bell bottom lead dungarees, because you had a lot of space for artwork.
That's right. Had a whole lot of real estate to draw on, right?
Exactly. So all of these things were already going on, and somebody just marketed the whole fact that when you do all these things, you're a B-boy. And then it came to hip hop, because as you well know, scratching used to be cutting.
Right.
Rhyming and rapping used to be emceeing.
That's right. So how do you feel that corporate America, and I'm gonna use that word synonymously with white America, but corporate America took, I hate to say took to take advantage, because I think that's what they did. When we hear stories of all Black artists, and I don't care, we can even talk about TLC and R&B. Mm-hmm. We can talk about them, and we can even talk about the fact, and you've mentioned this before, some of the worst people towards Black people were other Black people. We talked about that before, but this industry took those concepts and made billions of dollars. Not only made it billions of dollars, they made it $1 billion industry every year since then. And we don't get our fair cut from it, whether we're the artists, the producers, or the originators of it. How do you feel about that?
I feel like no, but yeah, you hate to say things like this, but initially you look at it as there's not much I can do about it. And the only reason I say that is because you can't make people do or express your feelings. All you can do is find like-minded people. And usually what they do, there's so few like-minded people as far as moving away from the standard workings of things, that they're too easy to crush.
Right.
And so it goes deeper. It goes into a system of finances where in order to secure the finances to do these mega deals and stuff like that, you would have to know how to secure these finances. And we don't, because we haven't been taught that. If I told people that they have a card when they're born with a card that's represented by a bond that's worth $500 million, they look at me like I'm crazy.
Right.
But, you know, we're not going to elaborate on that, but that's just an example of some of the things that keep us from taking advantage of our own abilities.
But do you think sometimes that, like for you, I'm gonna use you a prime example. When you have talent, we call it talent, but when you're the person, sometimes you just look at it as, I have the ability to do certain things, right? I have the ability to write a rhyme and then rap on a beat on time and the shit sounds good. Yeah. I have that ability. And we don't look at it as marketable. We don't look at it as profitable. We look at it as, this is what I do. This is what I do. First of all, how do I go about selling it? Like you just talked about, Bake talked about on this podcast many times before. I don't know anything about that. But what I do know is I can rap my ass off, and that's what I'm going to do because I'm good at it. And we're so talented that you can take that. You can take my rhymes and you can spit them yourself. It's all good. I'll write another one.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And we fall into that loop of saying it's talent, but it's what I do. If I don't make money from it, ain't a big deal. I've actually heard you and a couple of rappers like OC say, I'd rather have respect from people in my communities that know what I did in this industry than have billions of dollars. Now, I'm not saying, I know with you, that's not just the saying. You really mean that shit. But you probably would love to have billions too.
I would love that, yeah, billions, but not at the cost that most pay to attain it.
Because it comes with a cost.
That's the key. Yeah, there's rarely the best of both worlds, if you will. There's an either or. And my journey is really to capture both. It's the story of Solomon and his two sons, and he's like, you know, two paths you could take. You know, you give you the riches, you know, the wealth or the wisdom. And of course, naturally, everybody's going to take the wealth, but the wisdom of it all is to attain the wisdom. You will also attain the wealth, because attaining the you know, what's that saying? A fool in his money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember, but it's basically saying that, you know, you can have all the money in the world. If you're a fucking fool, you know, you're gonna lose. You don't know what to do with it, and so on and so forth. But if you have the wisdom, that means that you also have the wisdom to attain these things, and having the wisdom to attain them, you not only appreciate it, but you know the science of maintaining it. So, so I chose this long road, and it may not be, you know, through music or anything else, but, you know, I choose wisdom all the time.
Absolutely.
We've seen hip hop go through different eras, right? And one of the downfalls to hip hop is the rap beefs, especially after Biggie and Pac, right? And nowadays we're starting to see, it's almost every day you turn on the TV or you get on the internet, a new rapper has been killed, probably by another rapper or another rapper's crew, right? Mm-hmm. What is your advice to these artists coming up that are talking about the streets, but they're in the streets too? And that's been more the focus, other than the business side of getting out of the hood and getting out of the environment that you're in to make the money that you want to make so you can live the best life possible for you and your family. Like, what's your advice to these up and coming rappers?
First off, it makes me feel awkward to even speak on them or to them, because in all reality, they're not artists. First and foremost, they're not even artists. They're people who are absorbed with what we presented on screen, what we presented on record, and they want to be that. You know, they want to perpetrate that. So now, like, I had a conversation with a cat in Guitar Center, and he was like, yo, somebody was telling me if you have 50 grand, you could be a famous rap artist. It's like, yeah, you can if you know where to put the money, and that's what it's about. So for those artists who are really artists and not speaking to them only as artists, but as human beings, you have to learn to be more low profile. You know, and it's all in how you move. And I'm gonna keep it a buck, you know, and I'm not getting on these cats because they're young, but because they're young, they brag a lot, but they brag to the point where, you know, they get on that, you know, fuck the other side shit. And that's like the number one thing for beef. Like if you were gonna start selling a beef kit, all you gotta do is put that shit in there. That's the full-fledged beef kit. It's like, oh, nigga said, fuck the other side. Fuck this nigga, son. Yo, let's get this nigga. That's the first thing. Like, nobody want to hear that. Like, and they don't have the wherewithal, and they don't have this in here to say, like, yo, I made it. I don't care if this nigga's on the other side, if whatever the other side is supposed to be. Yo, if this nigga come right, you know what I'm saying, we could do some business together. I don't have a problem with this person or that person, you know, long as they ain't got no problem with me. But then that's not the thinking. Due to social programming and social media shit, and them reporting every time a rap artist gets murdered. Like, look how many other people get murdered. Look how a fucking Hasidic Jew gets murdered. It doesn't even go on the papers. It doesn't go on social media. A Hindu gets murdered. It doesn't go on but a rapper is not even an ethnicity. But just that whole code name rapper, it insinuates that it's some young black thug. You know what I'm saying? That's starting trouble and talking a whole lot of shit, wearing too much jewelry, and riding in cars that they can't really afford. That's the whole picture that's given. And so it's easy to discard the sympathy for anybody because, oh, it's just another one of those rappers, you know, because they demonize you, and it's messed up. My advice would be, if you're a real artist, you know, then carry yourself as such. You don't have to fall into the fold of, you know, I'm super thuggish, you know, I got work in my car, you know what I'm saying? I'm moving bricks, or I'm moving this, I'm selling this, and I'm doing that. Like, don't nobody, like, the only people who give a fuck, they not buying your shit. Right. They're not putting a dime in your pocket. They may have a subscription to Spotify or Amazon Music, but they ain't supporting your shit at all because they're a bunch of broke motherfuckers who are in the same bullshit. And I hate to categorize, but it's the truth, man. And you know, like I'll be telling people, like, it'd be people, you know, like young girls and stuff, you know, they do all that nails and they fucking eyelashes is this big, looking like a tranny and shit. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, unless you're in an environment where somebody is giving you positive attention and is drawn and attracted to that and is willing to do some type of commerce, some type of business with you, you wasting your money. Because you're impressing people who are just going to get angry at the fact that you have it and they don't.
Yeah, that's funny. I was reading an article by RuPaul the other day, and RuPaul was saying every time he dressed in drag, that's $1 million.
See?
Every time he dressed in drag, that's $1 million.
And you know our feelings on the shit, but you can't knock it.
You can't knock it.
You can't knock
you know,
it. That's
you
your way.
just said that everything comes with a cost.
Yeah.
He's willing to pay that cost to get that return investment of $1 million every time he put that dress on. Right now, I'm not putting the dress on. You give me $1 million, I put that dress on.
Yeah, and a lot, and it's some of these rap dudes who put shit on and nobody giving them nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of rappers went to wearing skinny jeans to get that $1 million, right?
Yep. And what's homeboy that put on a dress and another
Young
one,
Thug.
Young Thug,
another one
yeah.
kissing niggas in the lips and all that shit.
For a check. But as
But
you've alluded to many times, that's been part of the industry since the beginning of time, right?
That's right, exactly. And the flip side is that it's not hard for them because they handpick motherfuckers. That's what they want to do anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, we'll pay you to perpetrate this shit to the world, because they're not looking at it as it's just you doing it. No, you're a young black rap artist. You are ultra, extra, uber popular, and you kissing on another nigga.
Yeah.
That's the perception. You know what I'm saying? And of course, with today's society, and them being flip-flopped totally by social media, it's not the strangest thing in the world, but that shit is super strange.
It's accepted. A lot of it is accepted. But when that happens, especially when you look at it from the rap industry, but as we talked about before, black music perspective, do you think that waters down the history of the culture?
It, in the sense that history is written by the conquerors. So if that's the popular view and that's all people see and they don't dig any deeper, then it does water down the culture. If they look and see what the culture truly is, and that it is a plethora of different lifestyles, a plethora of different schools of thought that culminate to become this thing called the hip hop culture, which is really not even a hip hop culture, it's our culture.
Right.
But then your view, of course, is different. And I choose to look at it as, okay, you got these people over here, and then you got what people do. That's why every time, like, I always urge my associates or my colleagues in this so-called rap game to continue doing what they're doing. And I don't mean continue doing what they're doing like, oh, let me make my shit sound more like what they're doing now, like, what they call mumble rap, and your voice is this horrible when you get but all your music, you sound like with the auto tune and all that. And I'm not knocking any of that shit, but what I'm saying is, to me, that's that over here. I don't do that. Yeah. And I don't have to come. If somebody's going to do that on a song with me, that's their prerogative. I'm not doing it, and then I got to sit down and think, do I want that shit on my song? Because even if it's for somebody else's album, if I'm on it, it's my song.
It's your song.
Exactly. So I do this over here on the other side, if you want to call it another side. But I do this over here different from that. I don't want to, I feel like I come across the people based on my tonation, because that tonation dictates what's in my heart. You know what I'm saying? It's not really all of what you say, like the wordplay and stuff like that, which is important, but just as important is you convincingly conveying your thoughts, how you say it, your tonation.
Right.
You could, and
expressing yourself. And I told you before, I don't view you as an MC or a rapper or any of that. I view you as an artist. You remember in Purple Rain what the club owner told Prince? Tired of hearing you play that shit. Nobody want to hear that shit but you. I was an artist. See, an artist don't care what you want to hear. An artist is going to be true to themselves. and do what they want to do. Either you like it or you don't.
Yeah.
You know.
And I'm sure somebody really told Prince that too. And look, he's one of the biggest, most impactful artists in music history.
That's right.
And I mean, and when I say that, I don't say like one of many. I mean, he's in the top 5 easy.
That's right.
Probably the top 3.
Yeah, that's right.
Jazz, you worked with a lot of different artists, and you know a lot of people just like to talk about the Jay-Z situation. But I want to talk about something different because you said the word artist, and I believe that's huge because an artist takes their craft seriously. And what we witnessed a few months back with on the Versus stage between the Lox and the Dipset, you produced the Lox's demo tape. Did you see their level of emceeing then? Did you think that they would be where they are now as considered one of the best rap groups ever and possibly the most unified rap group ever, to where they kept their brotherhood with no beefs and none of that other stuff? Did you see that back then?
Yeah. I don't really take much interest in too many acts in that aspect. You know, I've worked with a lot of people, but I didn't consistently, you know, collaborate. And when I say collaborate, it doesn't mean that I either produced or co-produced or featured on like a whole gang of songs or anything like that. But along their career, like I was always around in the midst, in whether it be, and a lot of it was personal, you know, going up going up north from New York, going to the studios, seeing these cats out of town, seeing them at parties, sitting down talking to them, showing up at video shoots. You know, these things to me are important, and I knew that they were going to be like that because excuse me, because I knew who they had come from. You know, they were with a solid clique, you know, with 2 solid gentlemen I've known for a long time and respect, you know, D and Y Rough Riders. And yeah, so it was a no-brainer. And even the stuff that they went through, you know, as far as Bad Boy and everything, they kept it together.
Yeah.
And me personally, I feel like Bad Boy, you know, I feel like, you know, Puff was kind of like trying to find the one that he was gonna, you know, groom personally, you know, because he would have them do stuff separately at times, you know, which me personally, I wasn't really crazy about.
Right.
You know, but that's another story.
What artists do you wish you had a chance to work with, or that you want to work with?
If it's anything besides the money, like I don't have like a if I would say one, I would have to say if Donny Hathaway was alive.
I was just getting ready to say that you have a broad knowledge of music, and I don't know if anybody really caught this, but when you were talking about listening to the Bomb Squad, how you would try to decipher the music that they had hidden in the background, and you would dig in the crate, so to speak, literally, because there was no internet. You literally had to go find records and dig in the crate, put it on the turntable, and try to find different parts. I watched you do that. But your knowledge of different genres of music, I think, is astounding. So I know for me personally, some of your favorite artists when it comes to music are people like Chucky Booker. You just mentioned Donny Hathaway. Who is your all-time favorite artist? And it doesn't matter what genre of music it is. And you can't say jazz. Because I know you'll say me, but don't say jazz.
Yeah, I have to say, man, there's so many. I mean, y'all know there's so many great artists that, I mean, some that received their flowers after the fact, some that, you know, were mega stars, but I would have to say Donny Hathaway. He's my all-time favorite. Like, he's like, you know how like when somebody's talking and you get them, you understand like where they coming from. You know, like one of my favorites is also like the collaboration album he did with Roberta Flack.
Right.
And I mean, some of the songs on there, man, is just like the way they went back and forth. And, you know, I'm gonna keep it a buck. You know, Roberta Flack, she's a good singer. She's not great as a singer to me by far. And I'm not saying she's a bad singer, but she's a terrific artist. You know, soulful at times, but like that Donny Hathaway is serious business.
On that collaboration, he make her sound like a great vocalist, right? Yeah. So I know Baker. I know Baker ready to go into this next question, but before he asks that question, I wanna say a couple things to you, because I think this impacts it makes me who I am in terms of answering this next question that he's gonna ask you. Is that you were a mentor to me from early age. I was probably 12, 13. And when even before you knew or probably knew you were mentoring me. On this podcast, I talk about my dad being my hero. So a lot of people looked outside of their household for heroes. I looked inside my household. My first hero was my dad. Yeah. My second hero was Alvin, my oldest brother. But when it comes to mentors, to this day, until these two became adults, you were my mentor. I looked at them there, they mentored me, but you have always been my mentor, even up to this day. We had a conversation yesterday where you continue to mentor me. Even down to the way I lace my shoes. I taught them, they lace their shoes the same way. You know, it's even the way we express ourselves. Like I said, I draw, but I learned to diversify my style by watching your drawings, even though little people even knew that you drew. And those are the type of things that kind of culminate into my answer to this next question that he's going to ask you. Because all of those things make me proud of who I am. And a lot of that is directly associated with you. I still remember one of the main things that you told me. There was two things. One, you told me when we go out in public and we see a celebrity, don't be acting all crazy, man. don't be running up into them like, you know, like you never seen a celebrity before. That was hard, man. I'm gonna tell you, you put a burden on me that was very difficult. So, but the other thing is that you also taught me that you can admire somebody's work, but you don't know that person. You hear people all the time say, "Oh man, we love Michael Jackson." Because I fell into the same category where I talked about I love Bill Cosby, but I didn't specify that I love Bill Cosby the entertainer. Not Bill Cosby the person, because I don't fucking know him, right? Obviously. But those are the two things you always tell me. So, yo, you people admire these artists, but they don't know these artists, man. They don't know what they do, you know. So you can admire their work, you can admire them as an entertainer or a rapper or whatever, but you don't love them, you don't know them. Yeah. Those are two things that I still hold true today in terms of how I view people. And even on this podcast, I always talk about Bill Cosby because there was a lot of things that he said that Black people should heed to. Because if you incorporate that into your way of thinking, you become a better person. So somebody asked me before, when was the first time I actually saw you perform on stage as Jazz the artist, not as you known in Bedford, Bump City. You know, so I of course heard you perform at what they call the club back in the day. Me and Eugene snuck down there one Saturday night and got to hear you rap Johnny Bumpus Bump City. And but I remember the first time I actually saw you perform was not a rap song. And I don't want to expose you, but this is my unapologetic perspective, right? We were at Salt and Pepper. Pepper had a birthday party, and yeah, I'm going there. So we go to the party. I think the shit was at like Kilimanjaro or something back in the day, but we went to this party, and they called you on stage, and you sang "Happy Birthday" to Pepper on her birthday. I remember that shit. And that was the first time. And even then, I remember Jay leaning over, and Jay leaned over to me and Chase and was like, "I ain't know this nigga can sing." That shit was, for me, that's like one of the experiences that I will always remember, because it was the first time anybody really heard you sing. You know, so even Jay was like, I didn't know this nigga could sing. Right, and I remember him teasing you all the way back to Brooklyn about that shit, right? Yeah. This nigga sung Stevie Wonder "Happy Birthday" and shit.
But see, she knew because she was around us a lot. Like, we used to go to this studio in Coney Island. And we used to do a lot of stuff out of there too. Right. But let me tell you a quick funny story about that. Like, we took a picture. I think it was it's this young girl, but she's Sandy's aunt. So she's in the picture. I think the picture's on. It's on the internet.
The question I had to ask you, because again, this is my unapologetic perspective. We talked about hip hop culture. We talked about, the history in hip hop, that's why it was important to have you on here, because definitely in the South, there's a different type of mindset than people who come from places like New York City or DC, to where a lot of people don't understand what Black pride is, right? Because you're around a multitude of group of people who try to, especially in the South, they make Black pride kind of feel bad. You know what I mean? Like, what does Black pride mean to you?
To me, it is a culture within itself. The way you dress, even more so because, today's dress is so diversified. It's very much about the way you act, the way you speak in public. I mean, because obviously, even though we're amongst ourselves, other people are listening to us. So in essence, we're not going to talk the same way we talk, like if we end up in Ruby Tuesdays or something.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? We're going to talk totally different. And I think that Black pride is recognizing and actually conveying or purveying or conveying that difference. Like, knowing the difference between, like, oh, it's all of us, but then there's one of these things does not belong here, or that's not usually here. Somebody who is maybe not family and they're not really around us. They don't know two of us too well. That type of shit. It's still not, oh, well, it's just us. It's not just us anymore. And to me, Black pride is knowing the difference between that, knowing how to conduct yourself in different situations, because we're looked upon, of course, we're looked at under a microscope. Yeah. And, every little thing. That's so we have to be, and on the flip side of that, we are the pinnacle of society because we are the beginning of society. So even even secretly, we're looked upon as that. Even though outwardly they may say, oh, it's another nigga, this, that, and the other, or look what he got on, or because of his hood, or this, that, and the other. So being that the dress has diversified so much where, you may have a a little white boy from Kansas that sports a hoodie the same way, a cat from Brooklyn to sport his, and but it's about the way you conduct yourself. And I feel that we should always conduct ourselves on a higher level. And and some people think it's like putting on airs, like if they're Caucasians around and stuff like that, and if you talk differently a little bit, they'll say, oh, so you're gonna talk that way in front of the white man and this, that, and the other, you trying to be different and extra. I'm like, yeah, you motherfucking right. You know why? Because some of them, they look at us as pieces of shit. So my best thing is to show them, because not to show them to impress them, but once they hear and see differently, then they would have respect, and you can get it, whatever the case may be. If you need to get something out of them, or you just need to pass by with the least amount of resistance, or whatever the case may be, you conduct yourself. And I think the problem is, and the reason why so many things go on nowadays, is because, simply put, there's too many niggas that don't know how to act.
Yeah. We often give them exactly what they expect. So if all they see is the depiction that they already thought they were going to get, you're never going to change their mindset about who black people really are.
Yeah.
So when we have the opportunity to show them different, you said before, there's a responsibility. Mm-hmm. We all have a responsibility to show different. And it may not ever change that person's overall perspective of black people. It may not, but it'll at least show them that there are some that can have a conversation and can conduct themselves differently. And eventually, maybe that'll become the majority in their mindset, or at least in their circle.
Right. And the help is in the aspect of, when you do it, also understand that you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for somebody else to impress them, or whatever the case may be. Because when you do it for yourself, you realize that it is a form of self-fulfillment. Yeah. I know who I am, and I become more of myself when I can reflect upon whatever, slavery, all these other things, and not have to place that upon a person just because they're Caucasian.
That's right.
And treat them equally. And I think that the human factor pervades all of the past history and stuff like that. Because I had a conversation with somebody about Georgia, which is, one of your good old boy states. And you know what I'm saying? And and that whole concept, as hard as it is for people to realize, is fading. That whole concept is fading. You know why? Because those good old boys, sons and daughters, hip hop fiends.
That's right.
And to me, that's one of the greatest contributions to the hip hop culture, or the hip hop culture's greatest contribution to society, is in the fact that it changed the mindset. I think that the hip hop culture is, even though they elect and they choose all these things anyway, but I think that is responsible for the election of Obama.
Yeah.
Because the spiritual atmosphere of the world had changed with the advent of the hip hop culture and its growth.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you well, I know you did. You touched on some things that
I saw a couple other podcasts talked about is, from the late 80s up until the mid 2000s, white males and females from the age of 12 to 22 was the biggest contributors to anything urban music related, whether it was buying CDs or buying apparel based on urban music. So the ultimate plan was, if you censor that kind of music, which we know has happened, to where they no longer can purchase those kind of CDs, you created another avenue in social media and the internet, in creating people like Boosie Badass and some of these other rappers who's making millions, never even really being artists, as you say. They're not going into studios and producing albums. They're just doing their stuff on social media, and they're making millions. And white America are the ones that are viewing this content more than anybody else in the world. So what they thought they were doing by removing urban music from that plane, they've actually created a whole new avenue of money and interest.
Yeah.
So white America is logging on now and getting the same information without having to buy CDs now.
Absolutely. Before we let you go, Jazz, you've been active on Instagram the last, couple years. You got the Kings County merchandise on. Let the people know what you're doing on Instagram. Let the people know where to find your merchandise and what to look out for you coming in the future.
Yeah, so we put excerpts of a few different things on IG, just to let people know what's going on with me. And I have the JazO Chronicles that I elaborate on a couple of past incidents, and just some words to the wise, on how to conduct conduct yourself under certain circumstances as music artists. So we got the iMoveDifferent.com, where you can get your I Move Different apparel. Also, the Kings County, which is going to be available soon on KingsCountyMediaGroup.com, and it's KINGZKOUNTY mediagroup.com. You can purchase, one of these spanking spiffy ass caps I got on right now, and some other apparel, seasonal always, of course. That will be available shortly to be announced. And always the music. Can look forward to a project. I have a project that I'm working on, and this is the first time I'm publicizing it. And the name of the album is going to be called Jonathan Burks. That's one of my legal false names. You say false name because your first, middle, and last is your actual name. So anything besides that is your pseudonym. So so the LP named Jonathan Burks, and that's what I'm gonna deliver to you, Jonathan Burks. Couple other things going on. I have a 7 volume book series that I'm starting. I'm finishing the first volume, and it's called Universes. It's a double entendre because universes and also uni is one, and verse, which explains one of the main topics of the volumes. It highlights landmark verses that sort of impacted the rhyme game, as far as the hip hop history. So the first one is going to be for Nigga What, Nigga Who. And what happens in that, there's a backstory that leads to me actually going to the studio to perform it. Some of the players involved I elaborate on. I also explain different aspects of poetic license, onomatopoeia, simile, metaphor, so on and so forth, hyperbole, and give the definitions, give an example, and then later on in the volume, what I do is I text the actual verse, and when an example of one of these poetic license shows up, I highlight it and explain what it means, the double meaning, so on and so forth. I think that it's I sort of targeted it for universities, because hip hop history is becoming more prevalent as a curriculum in these schools. And they want to know, it's a hot item. And that's not the only reason. One of my personal reasons for doing these books is because of what we elaborated on earlier, where they think we come up with this shit by accident, or we start playing some bongos and shit and get a spirit in us, ooh, you know what I'm saying? We do this shit on purpose. If I say some smart aleck shit, or some real snappy shit, I said that shit on purpose. It's by design. And that book is in defense of every lyricist that ever spoke anything that has something with any texture to say. And it also elaborates on the fact that some of the main keys, the ingredients to creative writing. And also to note, there's a section that displays that even document writing, like grant writing and business plans, that is also in the category of creative writing, because it does have to contain a certain level of flair, which flair is a personal aspect. Personal is creative. So I think it's very educational. I've been occupied with a lot of other things. It's hard, for me to give the deserved attention lately to complete the first volume, but this is sort of a wake-up call. That's how we receive communication sometimes from our own mouths, and so on and so forth. So it's definitely a wake-up call.
That's right. Hey man, we're gonna be looking out for that, man. Again, man, we appreciate you so much for doing this episode. Means the world to us. But again, we appreciate you as far as hip hop culture altogether. And the things that the groundbreaking moves that you've made and the things that you've done and the respect that you've kept while doing that. You said earlier how the respect is the most important thing. And the respect, not just from the fans, the respect that you get from
other artists,
your peers, the other artists, they look at you that way. And, that's monumental. And we appreciate you for coming on, bro.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. And also thank you for when he asked you what you up to, not saying I'm in the studio, because we joke all the time. So our first guest we wanted to bring on was Frankie Smith, Double Dutch Bus, but he was still in the studio. He was in the studio working on a new album, so we couldn't get Frankie. Right? But we joke all the time about every time you go get one of these artists that's been in the industry for a long time, they're always in the studio, but we never hear anything new. Yeah, yo, I'm in the studio, man. Okay.
That's the train of thought that I'll try to get my colleagues out of. It's like, yo, if you're doing something, keep doing it. It's a whole, the business model, the whole setup is different now. You know what I'm saying? You're an entrepreneur now. So back then, we had the management team, we had the record label, and the record labels were actual labels that had everything in-house. The only thing that was outside was the actual distributor and manufacturer of the CDs, vinyl, and further back cassettes. And so, it's different now. Like, we used to be able to sit back like, yo, all I gotta do is go in the studio and record, finish that, go on the road, do radio, it's such hard work. That was all we had to do. You know what I'm saying? And get on stage, touring. And but now it's a whole different deal. And you know, I urge these cats to get up, because if not, you know, our shit is gonna die.
That's right.
You know, it's gonna die.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure y'all go find Jaz. I'll put the links in the description on where to find that the links he was talking about. But we love y'all. Peace.